The Skyrunner's Promise. Metal groaned beneath Arlo's fingertips. Not a comforting sound when suspended between stars and clouds, with nothing but atmosphere between life and oblivion. The control yoke vibrated through his palms, each shudder transmitting the ship's distress directly into his bones. Through the cracked windshield, electric purple lightning forked across a bruised dark sky, illuminating swirling debris that scratched against the hull like phantom fingernails. "Doesn't look good, does it, Pip?" Arlo's voice emerged steadier than he felt. On the dashboard, Pip's feathers bristled, shifting from emerald to midnight blue, the color of worry. The small bird's claws scratched against metal as it repositioned itself, beak clicking rapid staccato warnings. Between them, secured in a glass container no bigger than a jam jar, a single feather pulsed with living amber light. Not Pip's feather. Something rarer. Something that filled the cramped cockpit with the scent of honey and summer lightning. The container was warm to the touch, almost hot, as if the feather inside burned with its own inner fire. The ancient ship, Starseeker painted in peeling letters on its side, lurched violently as another gust of solar wind caught the port stabilizer. Gauges flickered across the console, needles jumping between yellow and red danger zones while emitting high-pitched whines of protest. The navigational brass and crystal display showed the Sky Temple as a pulsing white dot, tantalizingly close yet separated by the densest part of the approaching maelstrom. Arlo's tongue tasted copper. Fear had a flavor. His reflection ghosted across the instruments. Cinnamon hair matted to his forehead with sweat, freckles standing stark against pale skin, oversized pilot's goggles pushed up to reveal eyes wide with determination. "Elder Caelum is waiting." The words hung in the stale cockpit air. Pip chirruped, wings fluttering hard enough to create a small whirlwind of loose feathers. The sound held unmistakable disagreement, even suggestion of retreat. Arlo's jaw tightened, his knuckles whitened against the controls. "We're not turning around." The words emerged soft but with the unyielding quality of tempered steel. I gave my word. The memory surfaced unbidden. The feather falling into his hands 3 days ago, golden fire racing up his arms and igniting something ancient and forgotten in his chest. The vision, crystalline and absolute, of Elder Caelum's weathered face, the Sky Temple's impossible spires, and the feather's urgent need to return before the equinox sunset. No one had believed him. Their disbelief still stung, a wound fresher than it should be. The ship bucked like a living thing. Warning klaxons shrieked as frost crystals formed along the instrument panel, delicate geometric patterns spreading with alarming speed. The glass container housing the feather slid across the dashboard before Pip caught it with one delicate claw, talons scraping against the smooth surface, with a sound like chalk on slate. "Thanks." Arlo's breath fogged in the rapidly cooling air. His fingers, red with cold despite his gloves, fumbled across switches. The engine sputtered, coughed, a wet, sickly sound, then roared back to defiant life. "We promised we'd deliver it today. The equinox. The feather showed me." A percussive boom interrupted, metal screaming in protest. The ship dropped suddenly, Arlo's stomach lurching into his throat as gravity briefly surrendered its hold. The tart, acrid smell of electrical fire leaked from somewhere behind the instrument panel. His teeth clacked together, tongue caught between them. Copper taste intensified, blood now, not just fear. Outside, space debris tumbled past, twisted metal and crystallized chunks of frozen matter spiraling through the storm. Frost patterns raced across the windshield, no longer delicate but hungry, consuming the glass from edges inward. The temperature gauge plummeted so rapidly the needle seemed to blur. Pip clicked its beak against the container, tapping out a rhythm that matched the pulsing light within. The bird's feathers cycled rapidly through colors: emerald, sapphire, amethyst, before settling on a vibrant turquoise that clashed jarringly with the golden feather. "We should have left earlier," Arlo admitted, jaw aching from clenched teeth. "Shouldn't have waited for everyone to sleep." The darkness outside deepened to bottomless indigo. The feather's amber glow provided the only consistent light now, pulsing steadier than Arlo's racing heart. The ship's metal skeleton protested with every gust, joints creaking like an old man's knees. Arlo's eyes burned, moisture evaporating in the frigid air. Through patches of clear windshield, he glimpsed their destination, the Sky Temple's pale spires reaching toward the stars, balanced impossibly on a platform of iridescent clouds that shifted between silver and opal. A sound like a cannon shot rocked the ship. Warning lights blazed scarlet across the console. The starboard engine died with a wheezing gasp, its indicator light extinguishing like a snuffed candle. No, no, no. Arlo's fingers danced across the restart sequence, calluses catching on metal switches. The panel beneath the controls grew warm, too warm, against his knees. The remaining engines screamed in protest, a high-pitched keening that vibrated through the floor panels. The ship began to spin, slowly at first, then with increasing momentum. Centrifugal force pushed Arlo against his seat restraints until breathing became an effort, ribs compressing with each inhalation. Through the spinning viewport, the Sky Temple appeared and disappeared, appeared and disappeared, a lighthouse beacon growing tantalizingly closer despite their deteriorating situation. On the dashboard, Pip's feathers faded to a dull gray, the color of resignation. The bird hunched low, wings tucked tight against its trembling body. We're not done yet. Arlo forced the words through gritted teeth, tasting blood and determination in equal measure. The altitude gauge unwound with alarming speed, numbers blurring together. They were falling, not quickly enough to burn up, but fast enough that landing would be less landing and more controlled catastrophe. Pip chirped frantically, wings beating against the glass container. The sound ricocheted around the cockpit, desperate and demanding. I know! Arlo's mind raced, thoughts colliding like the debris outside. The emergency procedures manual had been absent from the storage compartment, probably stripped for parts along with half the safety systems. We need to lighten the load. He unbuckled with one hand. We should have left earlier, Arlo admitted, jaw aching from clenched teeth. Shouldn't have waited for everyone to sleep. The darkness outside deepened to bottomless indigo. The feather's amber glow provided the only consistent light now, pulsing steadier than Arlo's racing heart. The ship's metal skeleton protested with every gust, joints creaking like an old man's knees. Arlo's eyes burned, moisture evaporating in the frigid air. Through patches of clear windshield, he glimpsed their destination, the Sky Temple's pale spires reaching toward the stars, balanced impossibly on a platform of iridescent clouds that shifted between silver and opal. A sound like a cannon shot rocked the ship. Warning lights blazed scarlet across the console. The starboard engine died with a wheezing gasp, its indicator light extinguishing like a snuffed candle. No, no, no. Arlo's fingers danced across the restart sequence, calluses catching on metal switches. The panel beneath the controls grew warm, too warm against his knees. The remaining engine screamed in protest, a high-pitched keening that vibrated through the floor panels. The ship began to spin, slowly at first, then with increasing momentum. Centrifugal force pushed Arlo against his seat restraints until breathing became an effort, ribs compressing with each inhalation. Through the spinning viewport, the Sky Temple appeared and disappeared, a lighthouse beacon growing tantalizingly closer despite their deteriorating situation. On the dashboard, Pip's feathers faded to a dull gray, the color of resignation. The bird hunched low, wings tucked tight against its trembling body. We're not done yet. Arlo forced the words through gritted teeth, tasting blood and determination in equal measure. The altitude gauge unwound with alarming speed, numbers blurring together. They were falling, not quickly enough to burn up, but fast enough that landing would be less landing and more controlled catastrophe. Pip chirped frantically, wings beating against the glass container. The sound ricocheted around the cockpit, desperate and demanding. I know. Arlo's mind raced, thoughts colliding like the debris outside. The emergency procedures manual had been absent from the storage compartment, probably stripped for parts along with half the safety systems. We need to lighten the load. He unbuckled with one hand, keeping the other white-knuckled on the controls. The ship bucked and rolled beneath him as he searched the cabin, movements sharp and economical. His pack, food, water, the brass compass with his grandfather's initials worn smooth by years of handling, his spare jacket, the useless repair kit. He shoved it all toward the rear hatch, muscles burning with effort. Back in the pilot's seat, sweat beading along his spine despite the biting cold, Arlo checked their descent. The needle continued its relentless downward path. It's not enough. Pip hopped closer, head tilted at an inquisitive angle. In the amber light from the container, the bird's eyes gleamed with something beyond animal intelligence, something ancient and calculating. Arlo's gaze drifted to the ship's gravitational stabilizer, the only component worth more than scrap. The thing that made this junker spaceworthy in the first place. The thing that, if removed, would reduce their descent rate by half. Also the thing without which landing became a gambler's proposition at best. His hand hovered over the stabilizer's release mechanism. The metal was warm, almost alive beneath his fingertips. If he ejected it now, they might reach the temple. But then what? A crash landing at best. No way home. The feather in the container pulsed once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Its amber light deepened to molten copper. The rhythm matched Arlo's heartbeat exactly, as though the two were synchronizing across some impossible divide. Pip's weight shifted on his shoulder, tiny claws digging through fabric to prick skin. A reminder, a question. I promised, Arlo whispered. The words tasted like certainty. 3 movements. Twist, pull, push. The stabilizer disengaged with a pneumatic hiss that sounded like the ship's dying breath. Warning systems screamed new objections, lights flashing from scarlet to deep crimson, alarms shifting to higher, more desperate frequencies. Arlo slammed his palm against the external hatch control. The stabilizer expelled into the storm, tumbling away like a miniature shooting star. The ship lurched upward, suddenly buoyant. The remaining engine steadied, its screaming subsiding to a determined growl. The altitude gauge's needle froze, trembled, then began a painfully slow climb. It worked. Arlo allowed himself 3 heartbeats of shaky triumph before reality reasserted itself. But we still need to steer. Without the stabilizer, the ship responded to the controls like a wild animal, unpredictable, dangerous. Too much pressure sent them into spirals. Too little surrendered control to the storm. Arlo's arms trembled with strain, tendons standing out like cables beneath his skin. Sweat dripped into his eyes, stinging and blurring his vision. He blinked rapidly, refusing to release the controls even to wipe it away. The minutes stretched into a temporal hell of concentration and pain. The storm intensified, lightning striking close enough that ozone seared Arlo's nostrils, and static electricity transformed his hair into a crackling copper halo. Blue-white electricity danced across every metal surface, seeking paths to ground. Pip crouched lower, feathers flattened, eyes narrowed to frightened slits. Almost there, Arlo murmured, as much plea as observation. Through the diminishing storm clouds, the temple's circular landing platform grew visible, a disk of white stone gleaming like a pearl against darker surroundings. At its edge stood a slender figure wrapped in silver robes that rippled like liquid mercury despite the absence of wind. Elder Caelum, somehow impossibly, waiting. The clouds parted. The storm, sensing imminent defeat, unleashed its full fury. Wind sheared across the ship's exposed flank, rolling them violently. The landing platform transformed from distant goal to immediate challenge, no longer something to reach, but something to survive. This is going to be rough. Arlo's voice emerged steady despite the cold fear coiled in his gut. Without the stabilizer, the remaining engine surrendered with a final defiant roar. The sudden silence pressed against Arlo's eardrums like physical pressure. They were in free fall now, the platform rushing toward them with terrible finality. His hand found the emergency landing thrusters, a last resort system that might, if functioning, slow them enough for survival. The control clicked uselessly beneath his fingers. Of course, the laugh that escaped him was sharp enough to cut. Of course, that's broken too. Pip reacted with startling determination, seizing the glass container with unexpected strength. The bird dragged it across the console toward Arlo, talons scraping trails through frost and grime. Understanding dawned as Pip nudged his hand toward the emergency hatch release, the one meant for the pilot's escape. No. The word exploded from him, burning his throat. I'm not leaving you or the ship. We go together. The temple platform filled their viewport now. 200 meters, 100. The silver-robed figure remained motionless, face tilted upward to track their descent. Arlo seized the manual attitude controls, essentially glorified spring-loaded levers that might possibly adjust their trajectory enough to survive. His muscles screamed in protest as he pulled, sinews threatening to tear from bone. The ship's frame groaned, tilting just enough that they were no longer falling straight down, but coming in at a shallow angle. Hold on! The impact came with a sound like the universe splitting at its seams. Metal tore. Glass exploded inward, a constellation of razor-sharp fragments suspended momentarily in air before gravity reclaimed them. Arlo's body snapped forward, then back, restraints biting deep enough to bruise bone. Darkness swarmed the edges of his vision, consciousness threatening to slip away like water through cupped hands. The ship skidded across ancient stone, spinning, a symphony of destruction playing out in screaming metal and shattering components. Something caught, perhaps a landing strut, and they rolled. Once, twice. On the third rotation, Arlo's world went obsidian black. Heartbeats or hours later, impossible to know, sensation returned. He hung upside down, suspended by restraints that had saved then trapped him. Blood, his own, dripped upward toward the ship's ceiling, now below him. Each drop made a small, perfect crimson circle on the metal, overlapping into abstract patterns. The glass container had wedged between buckled console panels, cracked but miraculously intact. Pip was nowhere visible. Pip? His voice emerged as gravel scraped over stone. Pip. Movement registered in his peripheral vision. Not his bird companion, but Elder Caelum, approaching with the unhurried grace of someone who has outlived time itself. The ancient guardian knelt beside the wreckage, silver robes pooling around slender legs like mercury spilled across stone. Up close, the elder's face contained more years than seemed possible to survive. Deep lines mapping centuries of skywatching, skin the color of aged parchment stretched over delicate bones. You came. The voice was neither male nor female, but something else entirely. Wind through ancient hollow bones, waves against primordial shores. Despite the storm, despite the odds, I promised I would. Arlo fumbled with his safety harness, fingers clumsy with pain and cold. It released without warning, dropping him onto the inverted ceiling. His shoulders screamed in protest as he pushed himself upright, metal shards biting into his palms. But Pip, I can't find Pip. A flutter of wings answered. From somewhere outside the wreckage, his friend appeared, circling once in a blur of emerald and sapphire before landing on the jagged edge of the shattered windshield. The bird's head bobbed in what appeared suspiciously like satisfaction. Relief manifested physically, the tightness in Arlo's chest unwinding, breath flowing deeper into starved lungs. His eyes stung, though whether from blood or unshed tears remained unclear. The feather. The reminder struck him like physical impact. He twisted back toward the console where the container had lodged. The glass had split open during their crash. The golden feather was gone. No, the word emerged as barely more than exhaled breath. He scrabbled through debris, ignoring the sharp edges that sliced his fingers. No. It was here. We brought it all this way. His heart constricted painfully, throat closing around unformed words. He blinked rapidly, determined not to cry, despite the crushing weight of failure. I promised to deliver it. And so you have. Elder Caelum gestured upward with one parchment-thin hand. Floating in the still air, untouched by gravity, the golden feather hovered at eye level. Its light had intensified to solar brilliance, pulsing now in a rhythm that seemed to resonate with the temple stones themselves. As they watched, it began a stately ascent toward the highest spire. The heart feather returns, Elder Caelum murmured, as it was foretold. The what? The heart feather, the temple's core, its living essence. The elder's ancient eyes, the color of dawn breaking over unknown worlds, regarded Arlo with newfound respect. It chooses its courier carefully, someone with the courage to keep their promise, no matter the personal cost. Arlo tracked the feather's ascent, its trail of amber light spiraling upward, like a signature written across reality itself. I didn't know what it was, just that it needed to come home. That was enough. Elder Caelum extended a hand, helping Arlo navigate the wreckage. The temple has stood for 10,000 years. In all that time, the heart feather has departed only 7 times, seeking those worthy of carrying its light. Pip fluttered to Arlo's shoulder, feathers cycling through a prism of colors, emerald, sapphire, amethyst, before settling on a deep, resonant gold that perfectly matched the ascending feather. Your companion knew. Elder Caelum inclined their head toward Pip. Guardian birds always recognize the heart feather's potential. Guardian bird? Arlo studied his friend with new comprehension. Pip's eyes reflected impossible knowledge, ancient and patient. I thought he was just Pip, and so he is, but also more. The elder smiled, an expression that transformed their ancient face into something achingly young. As are you, Skyrunner. The golden feather reached the highest spire and melded with the stone. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then light surged through the entire temple structure, flowing through previously invisible channels in the pale stone. Towers that had seemed solid now revealed intricate latticework patterns, networks of amber energy spreading like veins and arteries through ancient architecture. The temple awakens, Elder Caelum whispered, after a century of dormancy. Arlo barely heard. His attention had returned to the smoking remains of his ship, the vessel that had fought beyond its capabilities, that had carried them through impossible odds. His palm brushed the twisted metal, feeling residual warmth. I broke my parents' trust by taking the ship, he realized aloud. And now I've destroyed it. Perhaps. Something in the elder's tone, a subtle undercurrent of amusement, drew Arlo's attention. Or perhaps keeping one promise sometimes requires the courage to make amends for breaking another. Before Arlo could respond, golden light spilled from an entrance he hadn't noticed before. Two figures emerged, their familiar silhouettes outlined in amber radiance. His parents. His mother moved first, face transformed by an expression Arlo hadn't seen in months, worry giving way to wonder. His father followed, usually deliberate movements abandoned for uncharacteristic urgency as they crossed the landing platform. Arlo! His mother reached him first, fingers hovering over his injuries before pulling him against her. Her heartbeat thundered against his ear, her familiar scent, cinnamon and engine oil enveloping him. We were so worried. When we found your note, the temple guardians brought us here, his father explained, joining the embrace. His voice rumbled through his chest, vibrating against Arlo's bruised body. Said our son had been chosen. That we needed to witness? Words failed him as they all looked upward. The entire temple complex pulsed with renewed energy, clouds parting to reveal stars despite the daylight. The effect was breathtaking, as if the barrier between day and night had momentarily dissolved. I'm sorry about the ship, Arlo began, the words tumbling out before he could organize them. I know I shouldn't have taken it without permission, but the feather... Shh! His mother's finger pressed against his lips, warm and real. Elder Caelum explained everything, about the heart feather, about how it chooses only those who understand the importance of keeping their word, even when it's difficult. We're proud of you, his father added, voice rough with emotion. His hand, calloused from years of mechanical work, rested heavily on Arlo's uninjured shoulder. Though maybe next time you could keep your promise without quite so much. His gesture encompassed the smoking wreckage. Drama? Arlo suggested, a smile breaking through despite everything. Exactly. Pip chirped from Arlo's shoulder, feathers now cycling through colors too rapidly to track, a celebration of light and possibility. The bird's joy was palpable, vibrating through its small frame and into Arlo's. Elder Caelum approached, silver robes rippling like liquid despite the absolute stillness of the air. The temple offers a gift to its heart feather courier, they announced, formality overlaying the words like frost on glass. For service rendered with courage and integrity. From within their robes, the elder produced a small object that caught the golden light, a medallion suspended on a simple chain. At its center, embedded in metal that might have been silver or something far more precious, a tiny fragment glowed with familiar amber warmth. A piece of the heart feather, Elder Caelum explained as they placed it around Arlo's neck, to remind you of your promise kept, to guide you in promises yet to come. The medallion settled against Arlo's chest, warm and somehow alive against his skin. It seemed to pulse in time with his heart, as though synchronizing with his very essence. Understanding bloomed within him, not just about the feather or the temple, but about himself, about what it meant to give your word and keep it no matter what obstacles arose. Thank you, Arlo said simply, fingers closing around the medallion. The metal warmed further at his touch, responding to his recognition. Above them, the sky cleared completely. The storm that had nearly claimed them dissipated like morning mist, leaving scattered clouds burnished copper and rose by the setting sun. The temple pulsed with steady light, awakened from its long sleep. Pip launched from Arlo's shoulder, circling upward in a spiral of iridescent color, each wing beat leaving momentary trails of light, before returning to perch not on Arlo, but on Elder Caelum's outstretched finger. Your guardian has another task, the elder explained gently, noting Arlo's confusion. But your paths will cross again, Skyrunner, when promises once more need keeping. Arlo nodded, understanding despite the hollow feeling expanding beneath his ribs. He reached out, running one finger along Pip's small head in farewell. The feathers there were softer than seemed possible, warm with life and purpose. Until then, friend. His parents' hands settled on his shoulders, grounding him, as Pip took flight once more, circling 3 times before disappearing into the temple's golden radiance. Come, his father said. The temple guardians have offered to return us home. And you, his mother added with a knowing look that contained both pride and challenge, have a ship to help rebuild, a promise to keep to the community about returning what you borrowed. Arlo grinned, the medallion warm against his skin, the memory of storm and triumph still electric in his veins. I'm getting pretty good at keeping promises. As they walked toward the temple entrance, he cast one final glance at the broken ship, not with regret, but with gratitude, for carrying them through, for teaching him what mattered. Above, the first stars appeared, silver pinpricks against deepening cobalt, promises waiting to be kept. The end. Thank you for listening to The Skyrunner's Promise, a work recorded and published by Millennia Publishing. Visit millenniapublishing.com to discover more. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible stories. Hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest uploads.